We've been talking about meditation in the last couple times. We talked generally about meditation 2 weeks ago, and last week, you'll remember I read about the nine jhana states, or the absorption states. So I wanted to continue with an interesting discussion of meditation experiences out of Trungpa Rinpoche's book, The Path for Individual Liberation. And he's going to talk about different kinds of meditation experiences. And I thought this was interesting and useful. So this is in The Path of Individual Liberation, which would be a good one to read. It's all of Trungpa's seminary teachings on the Hinayana. Now, Trungpa riffs quite a bit, even more than I do. I stay closer to the text, but his take on everything is always very interesting. This one is called Temporary Meditative Experiences, the Nyam, Nyam, which is a Tibetan term. And he writes, in Jomken Kongtrul's writings, there is a very useful description of the various experiences that happen in one state of mind in mindfulness practice, which is just meditation, really. He describes these as experiences rather than realizations because they are temporary. A realization is something that stays with you as a result of having practiced meditation, whereas experiences are temporary. Real solid realization is like a mountain, whereas experience is like a mist over the mountains. Such temporary experiences could either be regarded as interruptions or as adornments. However, if you reject them, you are feeding them and turning them into demons. The Tibetan word for this type of experience is Nam, which means a temporary flash of experience. So he packs quite a bit in that little introduction. The idea that how you relate to any kind of meditative experience, or really any kind of experience at all that you might have, that and he's suggesting that we relate to it as an adornment, that everything is an adornment. That's the kind of tantric or yogic perspective. And that rejecting is counterproductive. So that's a good point. And then the distinction between a temporary experience, which comes and goes, and a deeper realization, which abides with you on an ongoing basis. It changes your perspective on the world. So continuing, temporary experiences of Nam can be experienced not only in sitting practice, but during everyday life as well. So eating, sleeping, working, reading, whatever you are doing, there should be bare attention to what is happening. The way to do that is not by making yourself stiff or holding on to awareness or mindfulness while you cook or while you work, but by a sudden flash of awareness. That sudden flash of awareness could be repeated, but whatever happens after that, you disown. In that way, you don't find everything becoming rigid. There is a reminder of now, a flash of awareness of now, then you let things flow. That practice plays a very important part in everyday life. In fact, awareness practice is more useful and workable in everyday life than informal sitting practice, because sitting practice is an artificial situation. In sitting practice, there's nothing to struggle with because everything is already set up. Whereas in everyday life, there is struggle. There is a light touch of that and this, a dichotomy, which constantly reminds us to recollect a sense of being. So another full paragraph here. I'm beginner level. I mean, I suppose if you're just starting to meditate, then you're mostly not present, and then you have these moments where you are present, and And so experiences could happen apparently off of that. However, in reality, from a Dzogchen point of view, we just rest in the natural state. So awareness is not anything. I mean, we're just generally present. And if you're generally present, then all different kinds of things could happen. But generally, it has to do more with how you're being present. If you're focused on something, and where you have to pay attention to what you're doing, it's not likely that you're going to have any kind of temporary meditation experience. The whole idea of a temporary meditation experience is it happens during meditation. Now, meditation may be on a cushion, it may be sitting on the couch, just being, present without, maybe sitting in a room, waiting in line, but something where you're kind of not doing something. Because it's a bit of there has to be an opening for that to take place. So, at any rate, there are 5 basic Nam. In addition to these 5, there are 3 further, more fundamental categories of Nam, making 8 altogether. All 8 of these are temporary as opposed to permanent. The first 5 Nam, or temporary meditation experiences, are experiences of physical or psychological sensations rather than more fundamental states of being or states of mind. So he's going to give the 5 basic temporary experiences, and let's see what you think of these. The first is brook on a steep hill. Within the first set of Nam, the first Nam is the speed and movement in your mind, which is like a brook on a very steep hill. The first Nam is very busy, like water rushing down from the hills with no turbulence, none whatsoever, just like a pipe running from a gravity feed. The next one is turbulent river. In the second Nam, your relationship with your mind is like a turbulent river in a gorge between 2 rocky valleys. This river has lots of rocks with waves hitting all kinds of big stones. The second Nam has an appreciation of its existence. The turbulence in the river hitting these rocks re-emphasize the waterness of it, whereas the rushing brook is very speedy, very fast, but also quite nonchalant. 3. Slowly flowing river. In the third Nam, your mind is like a slowly flowing river. The thought processes that go on in your mind have become familiar and easy to live with. You are familiar with what's happening with your practice, so there are no particular problems and no particular speediness. It is smooth, like a big river slowly flowing. 4th, ocean without waves. The 4th Nam is the experience of absolute stillness. It is an experience of meditative absorption, which is like an ocean without waves. And the 5th, candle undisturbed by the wind. The 5th Nam is somewhat extra. It is reconfirmation of the accomplishment of the 4th. That is, the 5th Nam confirms that what you have experienced as stillness is real stillness, like a burning candle undisturbed by wind. If you look at these experiences from the ordinary point of view, you might think the 4th Nam is the nicest, the 3rd is nice, and the others are undesirable. But in actual fact, they are all temporary experiences, so all of them are the same. They're just experiences that occur in your state of mind, rather than one state of mind being higher or more spiritual than another. So there are no differences, none whatsoever. Absolutely not. They're all just temporary experiences. I thought this was an interesting description of mind and how you experience mind. I think the first 4 of them, the rushing brook, the turbulent river, the slowly flowing river, and the ocean without waves seem to me to be kind of a progressive development that takes place within meditation. They don't seem to me to be experiences. I mean, meditation experiences per se, they're just different ways your mind manifests itself. Sometimes your mind is going very fast, and sometimes it's going slower, and sometimes you're just everything's coming at you very fast, and things are kind of upsetting, and lots of things are coming. But generally, in meditation and following a meditative life, your mind, in the beginning, your mind might be like a very rough, fast-flowing river, but later on, your mind does become this sort of slowly flowing river. And on occasion, you have these experiences of real stillness, like an ocean without waves or a candle without a wind, just total steadiness of mind. Those are kinds of experiences. And although I agree with Trungpa that they're all temporary, and that you really don't, you let every state of mind comes and goes, and you don't chase it or follow it or anything like that. Certainly, there is a progression there that over time your mind does calm down. If your mind's not calming down over time, then the meditation's got there's a problem there. You should talk to your meditation instructor. If you're spending lots of time meditating, your mind is rushing about still, then there might be some way you're meditating, like perhaps watching television or crime shows while you're meditating that might be causing something like that. So where it gets really interesting are the next ones, which you'll be surprised to see show up here. This is his Jnana book. He calls them the three fundamental Nam. The second set of Nam is more fundamental in a sense. These three Nam denote the progress you are making, although the experiences themselves are by no means permanent. I think the first set denote progress too. But you are still arriving at or achieving a permanent state of realization. These temporary experiences are the landmark somewhat of one's growth, one's spiritual path, and one's meditation. However, it is very tricky if you try to recreate them. Obviously, you have to let them go. They are temporary, so you can't hang on to them. That would be like seeing a signpost on the highway saying New York City and thinking you've gotten to New York City already, getting out of the car and sitting down at the bottom of the signpost. So these three additional fundamental Nam that actually mark some progress on the path, although again, they come and go. Well, these turn out to be bliss, luminosity, non-thought. So here are the three Dzogchen. And of course, you remember from three Dzogchen states, bliss, non-thought. And you'll remember these from, of course, the 3 points of Gerrit Dorje, and particularly Wangdor Rinpoche's rendering of it, where if you find yourself holding on to one of these states of bliss, luminosity, or non-thought, what are you to do?
Yeah.
So Wangdor was at the level, these were all temporary and needed to just be present even beyond having these kind of wonderful states that definitely you would like to abide in, but they come and they go, and that's the natural way. Although again, over time, depending on the extent of your meditation practice, they'll be experienced more, where early on, they're somewhat more rare. So, bliss or joy. The first of these three fundamental nam is bliss or joy, and Tibetan it is dewa, as in dewa chayan. Amitabha's pure land, the land of bliss. You're completely refreshed, like after a long day of skiing, when you've had a hot bath, a good dinner, and good wine, and you are settling down to bed. It is completely refreshing, and there is a feeling of absolute well-being. Physically, tingling sensations and pulsations may happen in the body. Psychologically, there are little twinkling flashes of light and joy and feelings of being good, extremely cheerful and highly inspired. In everyday life, you might feel that you can do anything you want and do it beautifully. Whatever work you are doing, whatever handicraft you are doing, all of it is inspired. In comparison, in the second foundation of mindfulness of life, this is Trungpa's 4 foundations, the quality of well-being is not all that dramatic. It's just a sensation of being, of having a body, some kind of ground. You experience a much more solid sense of well-being and security based on the inspiration of the teachings in Dewa. In the first fundamental nam, the experience of bliss is romantic and flimsy. It has a flowing quality. The only solidity would be if you were self-perpetuating and you began to feel that it was ongoing. In a sitting practice, your experience is tremendously pleasant one and radiating love and kindness to everyone. It feels extraordinarily rewarding to sit and practice, and you feel that you're worthy to be here. The first fundamental nam includes all those extraordinary, good, and absolutely splendid feelings. However, the experience of bliss could be an obstacle if you regard it as permanent. If you feel that everything comes along very easily, thoroughly, and smoothly, then there is no room for effort. It is like moving from the mountain to an apartment where everything is automatic and easy. It begins to make you feel very impatient and soft. Therefore, you have to come back to the 4th foundation of mindfulness practice, mindfulness of mind. So again, that is bliss. Bliss is bliss. Bliss is very joyful in all different ways, and it's temporary, and you shouldn't hold on to it. So next is luminosity. The second fundamental nam is luminosity. The Tibetan term sewa means that sawa, brilliant light, luminosity, or clarity. However, luminosity does not mean that you literally see a brilliant light. It means that you're able to work with a tremendous amount of energy. You're able to create a link between your body and mind, a link between the psyche and your physical existence. It is as if you were the mechanism to run the universe. You create the link between that and this. You feel very able, extraordinarily able, in the sense that you could order the universe. It's not as abstract and joyful as the first fundamental nam, but it is more industrious. It is pragmatic in that you're able to handle anything that comes along without disjoining the experience. You are able to make things workable. There is a tremendous confidence and light, a far-seeing quality, panoramic vision. So the second one is really, in my experience, everything is just clear. And if everything is clear, then of course everything is workable and things are easy to do what you need to do. And doesn't mean you can do everything, because what you can do and what you can't do. It's not some sort of delusion about your abilities. It's just that everything is clear. And why is it clear? Because your mental chatter has died down. All of these states, these bliss, clarity, non-thought, all being in the natural state, and you've emptied your mind of thought and preoccupation, emotion, and everything. You're just peacefully present. And as you're peacefully present with an empty mind, you experience these things, bliss, clarity, and non-thought. And they come and they go. So then Trungpa talks about non-thought, and he says, the third fundamental nam is called Miktokpa, which means non-thinking or without thought. This does not refer to a complete state of being without thoughts, but rather to a quality of stillness. There is a quality of solidity and stillness that does not want to move. Any experience that occurs in your state of mind is very still and solid. Nothing happens. And then he has an interesting take. This Nam could bring tremendous depression. You may feel that you're almost going backward, that you're stuck somewhere with nothing happening. Everything is getting very monotonous and repetition. It is difficult to summon energy. Even a suggestion of moving outward is too tiring to think about. You just want to stay in one spot. You may feel drowsy and faintly aggressive. At the same time, this Nam could lead to a state without thought. As you sit, everything is so smooth and ordinary. In this case, you may not are excited or depressed. There are no thoughts, no irritations. When the end of meditation occurs, you find it very easy to stop. You are not getting into a trance-like state of meditative absorption, but there's a quality of stillness and solidity. Like the first basic Nam, these three fundamental Nam are also temporary. They can be perceived as temporary by mindfulness of mind, self-conscious awareness, or pure awareness. The idea is not to dispel these experiences or to cultivate them, just to acknowledge them. This is happening, this is happening, this is happening. You don't have to categorize them in any way. Simply experience them. So, he has an interesting take on non-thought. I'm not so sure about the depression part of it. I've not had that experience, but I suppose it's more you don't feel like you're doing anything when you're not thinking. If you're not thinking, then nothing's happening, and that might be something you need to become familiar with. I feel like, oh, nothing's happening, I should do something. So there might be some kind of anxiety that arises out of not thought. Like, how can I sit there not thinking, you know? And he does, it's true, it's not completely non-thought, like, there's not even a whisper of a word. It's just that your stillness of mind is such that any whispering of thoughts doesn't disturb the mind at all, and there's not a whole lot of it going on anyway. But it's very useful because, as I said before, the non-thought really allows the bliss and the clarity, and they all really work together. So this idea that when you have non-thought, you would have no energy, again, it hasn't been my experience, because I find that the three of them, bliss, clarity, and non-thought, although one may be predominant, they all kind of arise together when you're resting in the natural state. So I thought that was interesting. Any questions on that text or comments or?
He's essentially talking about shamatha, or is there any sense of vipassana in here? And I have kind of another question about those two, the shamatha and vipassana. I don't feel like... Well, I heard something recently that made me think that the distinction between shamatha and vipassana is overblown. Like, you have to have kind of the two happening in meditation generally. I'll emphasize this side or that side, but I guess the first...
In the experiences that we talked about just now, the first five, going from the rushing stream to the still river, to the flowing river, to the ocean without waves, that's obviously, that very much sounds to me like a shamatha progression.
Mm-hmm.
Shamatha is about calming your mind. It's about calm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And an ocean without waves is, a candle without wind. That's as calm as it gets. So the first five experiences are just the becoming aware of your mind, as it has different kinds of tempos. And it really is tempo you're talking about in shamatha. Is your mind, moving fast, or is it moving slow? And that's why the water, those are good set there. The second three, bliss, clarity, and non-thought are all vipassana experiences because you involve greater awareness. Your bliss is complete. It fills the whole universe. And everything is blissful and you're blissful. And when you're happy, everything is happy. And everything in you feel happy and about everything that is around you. So it's just kind of a pure happiness and a very, just a nice happiness. And then, so that's kind of Vipassana opening up. And then clarity and non-thought are also opening up too. Because when you're clear and when your mind is empty, then you experience panoramic awareness, but in that sense, you're aware of everything around you. So there is a progression in the sense that shamatha generally precedes vipassana. As your shamatha practice, as you still your mind, as you slow down your mind, which means slow down your life, which means slow down your being, then you open up more and your awareness kind of goes out. So the whole first thing is just to kind of, get still, and then everything opens out in terms of the Vipassana experience. And the enlightenment then is really the unity of shamatha and Vipassana, that you're both still and clear, and your awareness is both focused in the sense that you're present and you're not missing anything that's in front of you, but you also have a complete sense of background, foreground. So you have foreground and background. That's how I've talked about it before. And the unity of foreground and background is a complete kind of awareness, which is in fact an enlightened experience, or enlightened non-experience.
Thank you. So, what about this idea that shamatha needs a little vipassana? Obviously, vipassana needs shamatha, some stability, but can you do shamatha
without vipassana? People do that all the time. All sorts of people are able to focus on stuff. I mean, they build model airplanes. You got to have pretty good shamatha to build a model airplane, right? One of these things that comes with 400 pieces, and they paint them all, and they've got tiny little, and or jewelry making, or any little, all these. There's millions of fiddly little things that people do, and those are all, a lot of people can develop good focus without any kind of very, much of a broader awareness of what's around them at all. In fact, quite often people get so focused on, particular objects or things of that sort that they're oblivious to what's around. I mean, they're more oblivious than they would if they were just normally, hanging out. So quite to the contrary, I think it's quite possible to have great focus and very little general awareness. The hard thing is to be able to put that model airplane together, and if a pin dropped, you'd be aware that happened. And that's much better. You know what I mean? So I'm going to go and read a couple things that, one is a very beautiful little sutra. It's called the Tugataka Sutra. I have this book called the Sutta Nipata, and it's also in one of the 5 volumes too. It's the reddish orange volume, and that's the Sutta Nipata. This is just a short version of it that I have from a different source. So in the larger version, though, interestingly enough, all the texts that are in the Sutta Nipata, it also comes with complete commentaries on every text, which you don't usually get on sutras. So it has texts and commentaries, which is unusual for the sutras. So this sutra is the Tuvataka Sutra, the Way to Bliss, and as in the person here says, a portrayal of the ideal monk. So I was going to share this with the Zen students tomorrow because they call themselves monks and they wear robes. So I was going to let them kind of give them an idea of what it is to be, what they should aspire to as a monk. Fortunately, with you all, we're all householders, so we don't have to live to quite a high standard as the one I'm going to read you here. Master of wisdom, descendant of the sun, said a questioner to the Buddha, I wish to question you about the state of peace, the state of solitude, and quiet detachment. With what manner of insight does a monk become calm, cool, and no longer grasps at anything? He achieves this, replied the master, by cutting out the root obstacle, the delusion. He eradicates all thoughts of I am. By being mindful all the time, he trains himself to let go of all the cravings that arise in him. Whatever he may understand inwardly or outwardly, he has to avoid becoming proud of his convictions, for good men have said that this is not the state of calm. He has to avoid thinking of himself as better or worse than or equal to anyone. Coming into contact with various things, he should not embellish the self. The monk must look for peace within himself and not in any other place. For when a person is inwardly quiet, there is nowhere a self can be found. Where then could a non-self be found? There are no waves in the depths of the sea. It is still unbroken. It is the same with the monk. He is still, without any quiver of desire, without a remnant on which to build pride and desire. Sir, said the questioner, you have explained with clear words and with open eyes the way that removes all dangers. Could you please tell me now about the practices of the path, the rules that must be kept, and also about the development of concentration? The master replied, a monk keeps his eyes from wandering restlessly with desire, and his ears are deaf to chatter and gossip. He has no longing for new sweets to taste, nor has he any desire to possess things in the world as his own. Where he is in contact with sense impressions, he should not become sorrowful or sad. He should not begin to wish for some other kind of life or tremble when confronted with fearful things. When he is given rice and other food to eat, or milk to drink, or clothes to wear, then as a monk he should not begin to store them up. And he should not be anxious if he does not get any of them. He has to become a man of meditation, not a loiterer, and a man without any regrets or laziness. He is a monk and sitting or lying down. He spends his time in quiet living space, in quiet living place. He should not sleep too much, and he should make constant effort to be watchful while he is awake. Laziness, deception, laughter, games, sexual intercourse, ornaments, all these he has to give up. Poor monks, he does not study the practice of magic and spells. He does not analyze dreams and signs in sleep and movements in the zodiac. As one of my followers, he should not spend time interpreting bird songs or curing infertility or selling medicines and cures. The monk should not be perturbed by criticism or impressed by praise. There is no place for greed in him, hoarding, anger, and slander are emotions he has to discard. He should not get involved in buying and selling. He should learn not to blame anything on other people. When he meets people in the village, he must not speak to them in the hope of getting some reward. He should not boast, nor should he speak carelessly. He should not train himself in impudence or utter quarrelsome talk. The monk should not speak falsehood. He should not willfully commit dishonest deeds. He should not look down upon another, feeling proud of his livelihood, wisdom, or observance of rule and right. And when he hears other wanderers and ordinary people using angry words, he does not retort with harsh speech. For men of goodness do not answer back. Understanding this norm, the inquiring monk should train himself, being constantly mindful. When the realization comes that peace can be found in the state of calm, then he should apply himself completely to the teachings of Gautama. He is the undefeated conqueror. He saw with his own eyes the way things are. He did not borrow it from tradition. So with constant diligence and respect, the monk should apply himself to the teaching of the master. So I love that sutra. I thought that was quite beautiful. Obviously, there's a few things we're allowed to do. Not too much, really. We can buy and sell, and we can have sexual intercourse. Otherwise, most of those would pretty much apply to us. So this is really nice. That's a nice way it all comes together. A monk is meditative. A monk, there's wisdom behind all of this, of course. A lot of wisdom. And the monk is disciplined. But it's all done in a very natural way. And at no time does the monk or the practitioner cloud their mind with any kind of pride or a feeling of accomplishment, or stroking themselves for how good they are in any kind of way or how better than they are. I like the sentence where he says, don't compare yourself as being better or equal or worse than other people. So just don't even go there at all. And don't approach people with the idea that you're going to get something out of them, which would be contrived. So it's really actually also a very good description of the natural state. And that's sort of the ideal of what a practitioner should be in terms of their behavior. I'm going to slip in one more sutra, since we seem to have time. And this one is in the same book. It's about Upasiva's questions. And this follows again from the sort of the jhanas that we talked about last week. Then a Brahmin student, Upasiva, asked a question. Man of Shakya, he said, it is not possible for me to cross the massive ocean alone and without help. You are the eye that sees everything. Please tell me what I can use to help me across the ocean. And this is the ocean of samsara, of course. The master told Upasiva, use these two things to help you cross the ocean. The perception of nothingness and the awareness that there is nothing. Give up sense pleasures and be free from doubts, so that you will begin to see and to long for an end to craving. Master, said Upasiva, when a man is free from attachment to all pleasures and depends on nothingness and everything else he lets go, he is freed in supreme freedom from perception. But will he permanently be there and not return again? When a man is free, said the Buddha, from all sense pleasures and depends on nothingness, he is free in the supreme freedom from perception. He will stay there and not return again. Master, you have the eye that sees everything, said Upasiva. If this man stays many years in this state without returning, will be cooled and freed there himself, say whether consciousness will still exist for such a person. It is like a flame struck by a sudden gust of wind, said the Buddha. In a flash it is gone out, and nothing more can be known about it. It is the same with a wise man freed from mental existence. In a flash he is gone out, and nothing more can be known about it. Please explain this clearly to me, sir, said Upasiva. You, a wise man, know precisely the way things work. How has the man disappeared? Does he simply not exist? Or is he in some state of perpetual well-being? A person has gone out, then there is nothing by which you can measure him. That by which he can be talked about is no longer there for him. You cannot say that he does not exist. When all ways of being, all phenomena are removed, then all ways of description have also been removed. And that's the end of that sutra. I thought this was quite profound. So if you remember, the one of the jhana states was the state of perception of nothingness. I think that was actually maybe the third one. So then we also think of this because of our Mahayana upbringing as emptiness. So we see everything as empty. Things do not have any separate substance. Everything is actually an experience. There are no things anywhere. There's just the flow of experience and the flow of awareness. And really just the flow of awareness. It's not actually experience either. It appears that there's experience. And it appears to us that there are things. But it's really just awareness displaying itself. Empty awareness. So the person asks, well, what's the way? And of course, really, he's asking what's the quick way to get beyond suffering, to get beyond samsara. And the Buddha tells him, well, if you perceive everything as empty, then you're there. And no more samsara. And then it takes an interesting turn. So he says, he accepts that. And then what happens to you after you have this experience of nothingness or emptiness or shunyatama? So really, going back to what we just read, when you do lose this sense of self, this I am, this reference point of the self, which really means that you're losing your mind, you're losing your discursive mind, your conceptual mind, in the way we just talked about with non-thought and clarity and bliss. When that happens, when you empty your mind and everything, nothing is disturbing it, everything is empty, nothing can disturb your mind because everything was within you and you've calmed that, you've brought that to peace. Then the Buddha's answer, then where are you? And the Buddha's answer is, well, you can't say. And why can't you say? Because there's no content. There's no mental content or significant mental content. If there's no mental content, what can you say about someone? You can't say anything about them. They're just present, just part of they're just a point of awareness in the universe. They're just, there's nothing there. There's just awareness. So we can talk about each other because you could say, well, Joe has this thought, Joe is, does this kind of thing. And, because Joe's, different individuals have different kinds of mental content. Well, he's a Republican, he's got, these religious views, he's got these political views, he's got these views about life, he's got these views about families, all of the different ideas and thoughts that fill up our minds are all creating, this idea of who someone is. But when those thoughts are all gone, when they've been brought to stillness, when the mind is quieted, then there's nothing to say. And no one can say anything about us. We become totally inscrutable. Of course, there's no we to become inscrutable, but there's just inscrutability. Because there's no self, there's nothing to talk about. And so he develops that idea. That's the idea of what happens after enlightenment, what happens after you've experienced emptiness and nothingness and shunyata. And then it builds to that great last sentence: when all ways of being, all phenomena are removed, when all mental content is emptied, then all ways of description are also empty. So I thought that was really pretty.
With that question, is he trying to get to? The Buddha doesn't answer it, obviously, but he's trying to get to kind of a what happens when you die question? Or is he more of a question of...
Well, it's obviously from the particular way they're discussing it that they're talking about someone who's alive. So someone has experienced nothingness and has crossed over, so they're enlightened. There's no self, but they still, what's existence? You can see the problem with the question, right? What sort of self-existence is there after when you don't have a self? So the Buddha, it's a trick question in a way. There's no self-existence if you don't have a self. So he doesn't fall there's kind of a trap in that question. There's no self-existence if you don't have a self. That's the basic idea about it. And there's no way to describe something that doesn't have an existence, right?
Is he kind of getting at like Atman and Hindu philosophy, or kind of a critique of that, or is that not really coming up?
I think I think so in a sense, because the Buddha's view is definitely distinct from the classical Upanishadic view, the Hindu wisdom view from the forest seekers, which is the Vedanta, becomes Vedanta. And in that view, yes, you want to experience the union of Atman and Brahma. In a sense, you get a sense that the self is sort of glorified. There's this glorified sense of you're Brahman, you're God, I am God. And the Buddha is very distinct. There's no kind of megalomania going on with enlightenment. The Upanishadic state always sounds a little megalomaniac. Oh, in the sense that, I'm Brahman, I am that, But when they say that has a capital P. In Buddhism, we're that, but it's just the way things actually are. It's not some state of glorification. It's actually a state of just complete oneness with awareness, which is indescribable by nature, because there's nothing. It's just present. You can't describe the totality of the present moment. And when you become that totality of the present and you experience everything in a complete way, it's not that there's not anything happening. There's all sorts of everything around you is alive, but you can't begin to describe it. So little petty states of self-glorification are much, so we're not looking for cheap emotion here. We're it's something much more profound.
Yeah, I was going to say like the first five you spoke of, that they label as like just experiences, which actually the next three seem to be experiences as well. Um, those require like a person to possess them. You have to like possess that experience, and so I think when you end up in that state of just nothingness, perceiving the nothingness, then there's no possessor of those features. And so even though you can you can tell something apart, there's nothing there that's actually owning those those adjective, those features
Right.
that you're describing.
Right. You're at that point, you're really beyond the idea of experiences. Everything is a continuous flow, and it's an indescribable as presence. And in that continuous presence, life is flowing all around you in all its, multitudinous ways. And you're interacting with it and so forth and so on. And experiences are all kind of level in a sense, but they're very important because when you start off, just you don't even aware that your mind is racing. You know what I mean? So that's why he calls it a meditation experience, even though to us it seems like not a very good one. But at least you realize you're fucked. So you have to do something about it. So that's a start. That's a start, and then it gets better. But if you don't realize that you're fucked, then what you're going to take. You're just going to keep running around and banging your head against the wall. So there has to be some realization that I got to settle down. This is no way to live. There's no way to keep my mind in this perpetual state of of agitation. So just realizing that immediately opens things up, because then you're aware, and you're aware of the speed of things. And of course, in normal life, we go from all different kinds of, depending on the situations we're going in and out. And sometimes situations can be moving very quickly, but it can all have a very pure quality. I mean, if you're in some, you're putting out a forest fire. I mean, everybody's running around doing stuff, and it's very active. But also pure. So the flow of stuff in the river could be all different kinds of flow, depending on what's going on in your life. It's not neither here nor there. And that might have been Trungpa's point. And that we shouldn't think that being still is so much better than being active. I mean, some situations are naturally active. Everybody's, it's pretty wild. In other situations are very calm. So it's not like we should avoid situations where there's excitement or anything, like that, particularly. I mean, the real point is just to be aware of everything and unbiased towards everything. So that's the conclusion of our first of our 12 classes. This is the one on early Buddhist teachings, the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. Is through our own individual diligence. Everything is within our own mind. Because carry Buddhism to us, because the Buddha could have taught everybody how to individually and everybody he'd talk, and everything could have ended, and we would never have heard about it. All the lucky few who got instructed by the Buddha, got to become one with everything, and the rest of us are still running around. But it didn't happen that way. That there was this built-in continuing, so that people would not just liberate themselves, but also keep patching on, because everything takes place within the social context. So that's what we'll look at next. Anything else? Any last comments? I'll leave you all and go back and find my tree.
Thank you, Bruce. This has been awesome.
Very good.
Yep, great talk. Thanks.
So see you in July
You
then.
guys summer, and we'll see you in July. So enjoy the pleasant weather. By this merit, aim and mission. Fame defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves all day, on the ocean of samsara, free all the.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Bruce.
Good night.
See everybody.
Not everybody.